Yo guys, Punkrat with another video. So Classic WoW represents an earlier time in gaming. I wouldn't exactly call it retro, at least not just yet. I mean, we're getting pretty old at this point, but it definitely was a more simplistic time. With this, you'd expect certain aspects of the game to be, well, different, at least from what you see today. Most of you guys know me as a massive advocate for Classic, which I am. I'm a Classic fanboy, self-admitted. But that doesn't mean I don't see the flaws. I mean, nothing is perfect. Classic does have certain aspects of the game which I think we can all agree are relatively annoying. I spend a lot of my time talking about all of the great things and evangelizing the game. In this video, I'll take a different approach. Let's cover some of the most annoying things about Classic that you might have forgot about. Oh, and keep in mind that I'm not advocating for any of these things to be changed within the game in this video. Some of you guys may think that and get bothered, but that's not the point of this. It's just about certain aspects of the game that will end up busting your chops at least a little bit or at some point in your Classic experience. So let's get into it. Let's start off with Paladins, my dear Paladin friends. Oh, how I feel for you. Who remembers blessings? Blessing of light, blessing of wisdom, blessing of kings, blessing of sanctuary, blessing of salvation, blessing of might, 6 different buffs depending on how you're spec'd. Each class prioritizing a different buff, meaning that all the paladins in the raid need to coordinate who buffs who with what, which can get a bit tedious. And in smaller groups, you may be alone buffing different classes with their respective buffs. That's not the annoying part though. That's at least something, a bit more interesting. This is where it gets annoying. The buffs have an extremely short duration time. The regular form of the buff lasts 5 minutes, while the greater version of the buff is merely 15 minutes. Not that much better. You'll be constantly micromanaging and refreshing your buffs all over the raid. And let's say you have 2 warriors in your group and you want to buff the tank with light and buff the fury warrior with might or salvation. You now need to give light to the tank and then single buff the fury warrior with a 5-minute salvation, or have them hide from each other out of line of sight so that you could buff each of them with a greater blessing, because the greater blessing applies to all warriors within a certain range, so you'll have to have them hide so you could split each buff. Now this one I'm going to add in here, but keep in mind that this won't actually apply to Classic WoW. At least not from my knowledge, from what I've seen from beta footage. I don't actually have beta, but from what I've seen they've changed this. But in vanilla this was definitely a thing, so I'll add it here since it's arguably the most annoying thing in the game. In original vanilla WoW, the mailbox was way more rudimentary than it is today. Back then, you were able to only mail 1 item at a time. So if you wanted to send over a mass of cloth to your bank alt, you would be mailing 1 stack of cloth at a time and copy pasting your bank alt's name over and over again. This wasn't the only limitation, however. You were also only able to pick up 1 item at a time, without the ability to just shift click individual parcels to auto loot each one out of the window. It was so annoying. And the last part was the mail server could only handle 49 individual mail slots at once, so you'd have to reset after every 49 items, which can affect people who focus on playing the auction house and have, massive loads of mail to pick up every single morning. Although there was an add-on called Lazy Pig that many people used to use to just mass send mail or spam open mail slots. They would just click a button and it would just go through the entire thing, and they'd go maybe make coffee or something. So it definitely was a solvable issue. This next one I'm gonna label as bills. So let's make a little analogy here. In today's world, many people are living paycheck to paycheck. You might be working a random retail job while going to school, or you just got an internship that doesn't necessarily pay so well, an entry-level job with a basic salary. So let's say you make $2,200 a month after the tax man chunked your paycheck. Your rent is $1,050 a month, food is $500, electricity $50, internet and phone $100, transportation another $100, student loan debt could be $200 a month. That's $2,000 a month that's leaving your pocket on every single paycheck, which leaves you with $200 to spend. This is a great analogy of how gold works for most people in Classic WoW. Repairs, consumables, enchants, crafted items, respecking, training skills. I mean, it'll all dip in your pocket constantly. If you aren't the right class who can farm well, or don't have a great money-making model set up with your professions, or you don't have majorly demanded recipes for that profession, gold can be an issue for you. You might find yourself struggling to pay your repair bills pretty regularly. It happens to most casual players, and sometimes even others who don't bother with gold grinding much. Respecking after a while costs 50 gold each time that you do it, which is a very large amount in vanilla standards. And staying on that part, that's another pretty annoying part about the game. No dual spec. It can be brutal if you're PvPing and PvEing at the same time and taking them both seriously. You need to respec every single time you swap between raiding and a serious BG pre-made. Some people just opt for staying a PvP spec that's relatively viable in PvE, or vice versa, using a PvE spec that's pretty decent in PvP, but it's kind of a drag that you can't, every time you step in a BG, be your PvP spec, and every time you step in a raid, your PvE spec without spending a ton of gold. Now this one, if you've never played vanilla, will surely annoy you. In Classic, whenever your mount submerges even a little bit under any pool of liquid, at least past ankle deep, you get dismounted. You may be thinking, but Punkrat, many animals can't swim, it makes sense. Sure, I get it for the aspect of realism, but Peter Dinklage can't shoot fireballs either, and some horses actually can swim, and if we were going for total realism, then lightsabers should do this when confronted with water. But on a real note, it's just annoying sometimes. You may just barely touch the water, at a slight deeper point right off the shore, or jump across a river or jump across a little body of water and just barely miss the landing, and boom, you get dismounted. I don't really necessarily care that much about it as a game mechanic. That's not the point of this video. I don't want it removed, but it's just something that's probably gonna annoy you at some point. Okay, so this next one I'm not going to cover into too much depth because it's not really something that I care much for, and it doesn't really need that much explanation anyhow. But you could only track 5 quests at a time in vanilla. This, like the mailbox system, may be altered in the classic beta. I'm not exactly sure. I don't have an active subscription, so I have no chance of actually experiencing beta. But in the original 1.12 client, you were limited to 5 quests that could be tracked at once. And this could clearly be annoying to some people in areas like Stranglethorn Vale or whatever when you're trying to track tons of different quests, but I mean, it doesn't really affect me. I don't really care, 5 is enough. But I can see how it's pretty annoying for a lot of people. Now this next one is definitely something that has affected me, and I mean, it's a bit funky. So everyone knows Sap, of course, right? The rogue ability that incapacitates your target while in stealth. Well, in vanilla, Sap takes you out of stealth when you cast it on the target, and the way to change that mechanic is with a talent in your subtlety tree, which reduces the chance to get taken out of stealth when maxed out 3 out of 3 by 90%. So there's always going to be a little bit of that RNG element at 10% to be taken out of stealth. This is especially annoying in group PvP or 2v1, 3v1 scenarios. So let's say you have a priest and a warlock. You want to sap the priest and open the warlock. You may sap the priest and get taken out of stealth, and then the warlock, if he has fast reaction time, might dot you immediately and put you in combat and ruin your next opener on him. Or you might sap, and then as you get taken out, vanish to re-stealth quickly and then open the lock, so you're wasting your vanish to compensate for that bad RNG. It's just a bit of a funky element to deal with in PvP, and of course it drastically will also affect your ability to CC in dungeons, since you probably won't be spec'd into subtlety in late game at all, meaning you'll sometimes have to vanish after you sap or have your group pull immediately after the sap after you aggro all of the mobs coming out of stealth. So for this next one, let's stay on rogues a little bit. This is the most annoying part, at least for me on this list. It doesn't solely affect rogues, but it's pretty much the rogue's kryptonite, since they're the stunlock class after all. We've got stun resistance. Orcs, man, those damn orcs. Orcs have a 25% base chance to resist any incoming stun. 25%. That's a baseline 1 out of every 4 stuns will be resisted by them. And priests have a talent when spec'd 5 points into that reduces their chance to get stunned by 15%. This is brutal for rogues, and it's the reason why I never play a rogue on alliance side if my focus is PvP. It can be absolutely infuriating. You may get 3 to 4 stun resistances in a row on an orc, which will make you want to pull the hair out of your scalp. Probably the most annoying thing on this list in terms of just pure annoyance agony. Also, make sure if you play an orc in PvP to have emotes macroed and keybound, so that when you resist stuns from rogues and just turn around and kill them, you can emote them real good. It's a super effective troll. Now this one, I'm sure a lot of you guys already know about it, but for those of you guys who forgot or never played Classic, this might actually be news to you. So in Classic WoW, there's something called weapon skill. It's almost like an experience bar for each weapon type available to you, from 1 to 300 at level 60, and that top weapon skill is based on your level, so at level 30 it'd be 1 to 150. Every time you get a new weapon type that you haven't used before, you must level your weapon skill with that type in order to be able to use it properly. Otherwise you'll do no damage with the weapon and miss most of your attacks. Obviously you can see how this can be a bit annoying for a lot of people, but again, personally, I find it more interesting than annoying, and I feel that it adds an extra layer of effort, which, adds to the MMO experience in its totality. Many people find this annoying though, so I added it on the list. Now this one I'm sure a lot of my vanilla veterans can relate to, and even some of the more casual players would experience this because it was in Zul'Gurub, and ZG was experienced by most players. I mean, it was the entry level raid. ZG is a great raid, it's a lot of fun, but it has one major downside: ZG bijous and coins. Every mob you kill in Zul'Gurub will drop these, and many times you'll get multiple drops per mob. This means that you'll be constantly spammed with role requests if it's set to group loot, which it generally is for trash because you're not going to master loot or free for all the coins. And I mean spammed, like absolutely spammed, non-stop spam, they constantly drop. So similar to the mailbox aspect that I talked earlier, where you use Lazy Pig to auto loot all of your mail slots, you could also use Lazy Pig to auto need roll on all of the bijous and coins. It rolls so fast on it that you won't actually even see the roll window frame pop up on your screen. So that's a nice little increase to your standard of living. So here's a little warning for you guys: when ZG rolls around, make sure to get Lazy Pig so that you can auto loot all of those, or auto roll all of those coins and bijous instead of spending half of the raid clicking on need over and over and over again. You're welcome. Now this one, guys, I had to save it for last, because I know for a fact that there's total disdain from the player base on this one, or at least a big portion of the community. It's one of the more punishing aspects of Classic WoW, and it's affected everyone who played back then. I mean, absolutely everyone. It's Dazed. Yep, you probably guessed it. I mean, it's the damn Dazed when you get hit from behind from a mob. So mobs have a chance to slow you or daze you when they hit you from your backside as you're running away for the most part. This can be annoying as hell when trying to escape, especially if you're a keyboard turner. The way to avoid this is to strafe kite, like I've explained in many of my videos. If you want to learn how to strafe kite, check my warrior leveling guide. I had a pretty in-depth explanation for it there. So here you can see that I'm actually running away and jumping full speed as I strafe kite, never giving my back to the mobs, and then avoiding the chance of being dazed. What makes this so annoying though, I mean, the worst part about the daze mechanic is if you're mounted and a mob hits you from behind as you run by it, if the daze procs on that hit, you get dismounted. Very frustrating when you're trying to accumulate mobs or just run through a zone with a bunch of mobs in it. And the RNG element can get you sometimes where that first hit that you take from the mob will actually daze you off of your mount, which is super annoying, especially with leeway. Alright fellas, that's it for this one. These were some of the seemingly most annoying things that I could think of off the top of my head as I brainstormed for this video, kind of like my other videos. I may have actually missed a couple crucial ones, and if I did, I probably did, just add them in the comment section and let's talk about it. Honestly though, as annoying as some of these were, or are gonna be going into Classic, they kind of added to the notoriety of the game, especially over time. I'm sure some of these, come up in conversations when you meet other vanilla players who played back then and you reminisce with them about it, good or bad. It all adds to the experience and the memories of this great game. I hope you enjoyed this one, friends, and if you did, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, of course, you know the drill, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.